Here's 20 weird facts you never knew about Catch-22. Number 1. The Daredevil cameraman and a horrific tragedy. The war in Catch-22 didn't just chew up characters on screen. It claimed a crew member in real life. Second unit director John Jordan was famous in Hollywood for being fearless, or maybe just allergic to self-preservation. On James Bond films, he'd hang off planes like Tom Cruise's insane uncle, capturing shots nobody else dared attempt. His one iron rule was no safety harness, because apparently it cramped his style. Translation: gravity won't catch me slipping. Spoiler, it did. While filming, he leaned out of the open tail gunner bay of a B-25 bomber, chasing that perfect shot. Then turbulence hit, and Jordan's harness-free philosophy turned into a 4,000-foot freefall into the Gulf of California. Just like that, he went from daredevil cameraman to missing credit in the memorial reel. Production froze, and suddenly the film's gallows humor wasn't so funny anymore, because when your crew dies making an anti-war movie, the irony lands harder than any bomb run. Number 2. The lasting legacy of the Catch-22 logic.
Grounded? That's all. And then you can ground him. No, then I cannot ground him. There's a catch. A catch.
The film may have failed at the box office, but its central idea, and that of the book, has become immortal. The term Catch-22 is now a global shorthand for a no-win situation, a logical trap. The film's explanation is iconic. Doc Danica shouts it over the roar of engines. Anyone who wants to get out of combat isn't crazy. A man is crazy if he keeps flying dangerous missions. But if he asks to be removed from duty, that proves he's sane and therefore can't be grounded. The only way out is to be crazy. And asking to get out proves you're sane. It's a lock. A perfect, beautiful, insane trap that perfectly captured the feeling of being crushed by illogical systems. Number 3. The director who demanded realism. Mike Nichols was fresh off The Graduate, where he made adultery look chic and Simon and Garfunkel sound like prophets. Nichols could have cashed in on any project in Hollywood, and he chose the impossible one. Nichols was famous for pulling raw, unforgettable performances out of actors. But for this film, he got a new kink: realism. No models dangling from wires, no cardboard cockpits wobbling on sound stages. He wanted the real thing. This obsession came with a price tag sharp enough to make Paramount bleed. $17 million in 1970s money, basically sell your grandmother expensive. And Nichols wasn't worried about wasting it. Why? Because when you're Hollywood's golden boy, you can spend money anyhow you want. The schedule collapsed, the budget went nosediving, but Nichols got what he wanted: authenticity. Or, as the crew probably called it, a really slow suicide pact with cameras. Number 4. The impossible adaptation. Before the planes and explosions, there was just a book that gave Hollywood executives migraines. Joseph Heller's Catch-22 wasn't a novel. It was a literary stress test. The timelines tangled, the logic laughed at itself, and reading it was like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without instructions. For years, studios wouldn't touch it. Too complex, too dark, too expensive. How do you film a book that lives inside a man's fracturing mind? The job fell to screenwriter Buck Henry. It took him 2 years of wrestling with chaos to find a path. With director Mike Nichols, they made a radical decision. Don't film the book. Film the feeling of the book. The dread, the absurdity, the suffocation of war wrapped in punchlines that make you laugh and then immediately regret it. Anchoring it all to Yossarian, they turned an unfilmable novel into a screenplay. Not coherent, not safe, but raw enough to drag everyone into madness. And thus began one of the most punishing productions Hollywood ever dared to bankroll. Number 5. Building a ghostly airfield in the middle of nowhere. Finding a working World War II airbase in the late 1960s was about as realistic as finding a unicorn with a pilot's license. So they did the unthinkable. They built one from scratch in the punishing heat of the Mexican desert near Guaymas. For months, crews carved a 6,000-foot runway out of rock and brush. They built barracks, a control tower, a fully functional airfield, willed into existence for a movie. But Nichols wanted more than an authentic set. He wanted an authentic feeling. And when he saw the base, filled with hundreds of extras, it felt too alive. It didn't have the isolation, the dread he was chasing. So after the first week, he did something that panicked the studio. He sent 200 extras home. He wanted the base to feel empty and haunted. The result is a film that breathes emptiness. Number 6. The 6-month, 10-minute air show. They had the base. They had the planes. Now they had to make them dance across the sky without killing anyone. The aerial shots in Catch 22 are stunning, raw, powerful, terrifying. But capturing them was a slow, brutal, and bleedingly expensive nightmare. Paramount budgeted 6 weeks for all the flying sequences. Cute. It took 6 months. Those bombers spent 1,500 hours in the sky, burning fuel, money, and sanity under the Mexican sun. Day after day, pilots pushed these vintage machines to their absolute limits. And interestingly, after all that time, all that money, all that sweat, the final film uses only about 10 minutes of that footage. 6 months of filming for 10 minutes of screen time. It was a level of obsession that borders on madness. Number 7. The plane they buried in the desert. Of the 17 bombers assembled for Catch 22, 16 lived to fly another day. The 17th? It got a Viking funeral, Hollywood style. For a crash landing scene, Nichols refused to use a miniature. He wanted real fire, real metal. So, the plane they found in Mexico, the one that wasn't in great shape, was the chosen one. It was so fragile it had to be flown to the set with its landing gear down because nobody trusted it to deploy. For its final scene, a stunt pilot took it up, brought it down hard, and got out. Then the special effects crew blew it sky high. But the story doesn't end there. What do you do with the smoldering corpse of a B-25 bomber? In a move that feels like a myth, they just dug a giant hole in the desert right next to their fake runway and buried it. And as far as anyone knows, its bones are still sleeping under the sand today. Number 8. An unlikely cast of real people.
Nothing! Nothing at all! Ah, except...
Why Ferreira?
What do you mean, why Ferreira?
For his massive war epic, Mike Nichols made an unusual choice. He didn't want Hollywood glamour. He wanted faces. Real, tired, ordinary faces. The kinds of faces that actually get drafted. The cast he gathered was a killer's row of character actors, most on the edge of stardom. Alan Arkin, a young Martin Sheen, Bob Newhart, John Voight. A fascinating irony emerged on set. The actors, the stars, looked like a bunch of random guys, while the daredevil stunt pilots all looked like square-jawed movie heroes. This choice was everything. It made the characters feel relatable and their nightmare believable. Number 9. The uniform trick. Filming a 1944 airbase in the middle of the desert was hard enough. Keeping a bunch of sweaty, modern crew members from photobombing history? Impossible. Nothing ruins your "War is Hell" shot faster than a guy in a Rolling Stones t-shirt hauling a boom mic through the background. The solution? Deception, something the Army would have approved of. They issued World War II-style uniforms to the entire crew. Director, grips, caterers, even the guy who emptied the porta-potties, everybody looked like they were about to ship off to Normandy. That way, if a crew member accidentally walked through the back of a scene, it didn't matter. They just looked like another soldier on the base. It was a small detail that saved them countless hours and, in a strange way, blurred the line even further between the movie they were making and the war they were recreating. Like what you're hearing so far? March your way to the like and subscribe buttons and drop a bomb on them. Number 10. The Surrealism of Major Major's Office. Catch-22 isn't just a war movie, it's a fever dream with dog tags. And nowhere does it go full hallucination harder than Major Major's Office. In the book, he's a man promoted by a computer glitch, I know the feeling, who will only see people when he's not there. To capture that bureaucratic insanity, Nichols built a magic trick. In one unbroken shot as the Major paces his office, the portrait on the wall behind him changes. Roosevelt becomes Churchill. Churchill becomes Stalin. No cuts, no obvious CGI. They built a rotating panel into the wall, timed perfectly to the actor's movements. It wasn't just a gag, it was the film's theme made literal. Authority is faceless, alliances shift, and reality is not guaranteed. And if you think that was surreal, just wait until you hear about a naked woman riding a bomb. How about some male nudity first? Number 11. Toilets and nudity.
Here's your medal, Captain. You're a very weird person, Surreal.
In 1970, Hollywood still had rules about what you could show on screen. Violence? Sure. War crimes? Fine. But God forbid someone actually use a toilet. Then along came Catch-22, proudly flushing away decades of cinematic modesty. It became one of the first major American films to show a character actually sitting on the john. The audience was scandalized. Apparently, watching men die in slow motion was acceptable, but watching one take a leak was the end of civilization. But Nichols didn't stop at toilets. Nope, he doubled down and gave America another first, full frontal male nudity. Alan Arkin's Yossarian spends chunks of the film naked, in a tree, wandering the base, basically turning the airfield into the world's most depressing nudist colony. It wasn't there for cheap shock, it was symbolic. His vulnerability, his rejection of military conformity, his humanity stripped down to the skin. Still, for many viewers, seeing Yossarian bare it all was more jarring than watching planes explode. Number 12. The cinematography of Limbo. The look of Catch-22 is unsettling, hyper-real, and dreamlike all at once. That was the work of cinematographer David Watkin, and this happened because of a bold choice he made. Instead of lighting the actors from the front, he often shot with the sun directly behind them. This technique, called backlighting, plunged the characters into shadow and blew out the backgrounds into a hazy, bleached white. The goal was to make you feel like you were in limbo. This wasn't a real place. It was purgatory, a ghostly, ethereal world where the characters were trapped between life and death. It's a visual style that perfectly mirrors Yossarian's fractured state of mind, making the audience feel just as disoriented as he is. Number 13. The Art of the Long Take. Mike Nichols came from theater, and he loved letting a scene breathe. He and Watkin executed some of the most impressive long takes of the era. The most famous example, Doc Danica explaining the Catch-22 paradox to Yossarian. The whole conversation happens in one continuous shot as they walk across the deafeningly loud airfield, B-25 engines roaring in the background. They have to shout their lines. It turns a scene of pure exposition into a frantic, terrifying comedy routine. Staging it in the middle of chaos instead of a quiet room makes the twisted logic feel even more insane. Number 14. The authentic squadron patch. The devil is in the details. And one of the most personal details in the film is the squadron patch worn by the men. It shows a naked woman gleefully riding a bomb. This wasn't some invention from the art department. It was real. It was the actual insignia of the 488th Bomb Squadron, the real-life unit that author Joseph Heller served with during World War II. Heller's own experiences as a bombardier were the DNA of the novel. Using his real patch was a direct link to that history, grounding all the film's wild satire in a bedrock of lived truth. Number 15. The famous last words that weren't. The death of Snowden, the young radio man, is the moment the film's heart breaks. In the book, Snowden whispers, "I'm cold," revealing his mortal wound and teaching Yossarian the secret that man was matter. It's what breaks him. But for the film, screenwriter Buck Henry felt the line was too philosophical. He was telling his friend, the actor Peter Fonda, about the problem. Fonda, without missing a beat, suggested a new line, "Please don't leave me." It was perfect. But when they shot the scene, the young actor playing Snowden was so convincingly lost in the shock and trauma that he couldn't get any words out. He just shivered, his eyes blank. Nichols saw the raw power in that silent terror and kept it. In the final film, Snowden says nothing. His secret dies with him, in a frozen, silent stare that's more haunting than any line could ever be. Keep listening to find out how this movie bombed, in more ways than one. Number 16. The original ending was even darker. Heller's novel ends with a desperate sliver of hope. Yossarian learns his friend Orr made it to Sweden and he leaps out a window to follow him, his fate unknown. The film ends the same way. But the original screenplay had a darker final note. After Yossarian jumps, the camera was meant to pan back to the base where a fresh-faced replacement pilot arrives. He asks an officer, "Where are the girls?" The officer points to the brothels, and the new kid runs off, eager for adventure. The final shot would have been this new, naive soldier ready to be fed into the same meat grinder Yossarian just escaped. The message, nothing changes. Nichols ultimately cut it, deciding to end on Yossarian's personal act of rebellion, however small. Number 17. The star who damaged a supergroup. The role of the nervous Major Danby was played by Art Garfunkel, then at the absolute peak of his fame with Simon and Garfunkel. His gentle, worried presence was perfect. But his work on the film had a huge and ultimately destructive impact on his musical partnership. The shoot was supposed to be quick. Instead, it dragged on for months, trapping Garfunkel in Mexico. Paul Simon, back home, had written a new batch of songs for their next album, Bridge Over Troubled Water, and grew intensely frustrated by the delays. The long separation created a rift that never healed. While the film's production wasn't the sole reason for their breakup, it was a major catalyst that pushed their fractured partnership to the break-in point. By the time Garfunkel returned, the damage was done. They finished the album, but the iconic duo was over. Number 18. The other anti-war satire. Paramount Pictures poured a fortune into Catch-22. They knew they had a masterpiece, an epic that would perfectly capture the anti-war mood of 1970. There was just one problem. A few months before its release, another movie came out of nowhere and stole its soul. That film was Robert Altman's MASH. Made for pocket change, shot fast with a cast of unknowns, MASH was also a dark, cynical, anti-war comedy. But where Catch-22 was epic and dense, MASH was scrappy, chaotic, and hilarious. It hit first, and it hit hard, becoming a cultural phenomenon. By the time Catch-22 arrived, critics and audiences felt like they'd seen it before. It was called slow, self-important, and depressing. It bombed. A classic case of terrible timing. Two brilliant satires, and the world only had room for one. Number 19. Assembling a ghost fleet. This is the part of the Catch-22 story that sounds like a war epic all its own. Mike Nichols wanted bombers, real B-25 Mitchell bombers, to haunt his handmade desert airfield. The problem was that by 1969, most of them had been reduced to scrap metal, rusting away in junkyards, or turned into lawn ornaments for really intense history nerds. Finding one was hard enough, and he needed a squadron. The job fell to Tallmance Aviation, Hollywood's go-to pilots for vintage planes. Their search was a global scavenger hunt. They tore through scrapyards, tracked down rumors in Mexico, and hunted private collectors. In the end, they found them. 17 flyable B-25s and one more non-flyable shell they found in Mexico for static shots. It was the largest gathering of these warbirds since the war ended. This effort didn't just serve the movie, it had a ripple effect through history. The production is credited with playing a major role in preserving the B-25, rescuing these specific aircraft from being lost forever. Many of those same planes still fly in air shows today, ghosts of the silver screen. And finally, fact number 20, the cult classic Rebirth. For years, Catch-22 was seen as a noble failure, ambitious, beautiful, but a flop. But time has a way of changing things. The film didn't die. It just waited. It found a new audience on late-night TV and in revival theaters. People started to see it for what it was, not for what it wasn't. They saw past MASH and recognized its own unique, breathtaking power. The surreal visuals, the daring tone, the incredible cast. Critics began to re-evaluate it, arguing its difficulty wasn't a flaw, but a feature. Today, Catch-22 is a classic. A bold, singular masterpiece from a director at the peak of his powers. Its story of production chaos and tragedy has only added to its legend, a monument to a time when a studio would bet the farm on a vision this crazy. And here's a bonus fact for you before you fly off into the sunset. Orson Welles didn't just play General Dreedle in Catch-22, he nearly stole the whole production. Welles originally lobbied to direct the film himself, insisting he was the only man alive who could wrangle Heller's chaos. Paramount disagreed, handing the reins to Mike Nichols. Welles took the rejection with his trademark humility, by constantly showing up on set and telling people how he would have done it better. He even demanded to redesign his own uniform to look more Wellesian, which basically meant making it too tight and too dramatic. His ego clashed with Nichols's vision, but the result was unforgettable. A performance so pompous it practically played itself. In the end, Welles gave the film its most meta moment. A man convinced he should be in charge, trapped in a system that wouldn't let him. So, what's the most insane behind-the-scenes fact you know that we missed? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this dive bomb into one of Hollywood's most notorious productions, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.
Well, that was weird.